I never thought a joke could change my life. It was supposed to be harmless, a laugh at my sister's expense. She was always so particular about her clothes, her appearance, her life. I had borrowed her favorite dress once before, just to mess around, and she had yelled at me, of course, but it was funny. That day, I thought I could get away with something even bolder. I found her newest dress, the one she had left draped over her chair after trying it on, sparkling in soft pink fabric that shimmered when it caught the light. I had this ridiculous idea that I could put it on, snap a selfie, and send it to my friends with some caption about being her twin. Just a joke, just a laugh. I slipped it over my head, careful not to touch the delicate lace, and immediately felt something strange. The fabric felt different against my skin, warmer somehow, almost alive. I laughed nervously, taking the phone out to snap a picture. But when I looked at the screen, I froze. The reflection staring back at me wasn't exactly me. My face looked softer, my jawline narrower, my eyes bigger, and my lips fuller. I blinked, thinking it was some weird trick of the lighting, but no, it was me or some version of me transformed. My hands flew to my face, touching my cheeks, my jaw, my hair, and it felt right. Too right. Panic set in. I tried to pull the dress off, but it wouldn't budge. The zipper was stuck. No, more than that, it felt like it had merged with me somehow. My body was changing. My shoulders narrowed, my waist pinched in, my legs lengthened. I stumbled to the mirror again, gasping, and the person staring back at me looked exactly like my sister. Not a caricature, not a costume, but a perfect twin. I whispered her name, almost crying. This can't be real. Then, of course, she walked in. My sister, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, eyes wide in shock. She looked at me like she had just seen a ghost or worse, a perfect copy of herself standing in the middle of her room. What did you do?" she asked, her voice shaking between anger and disbelief. I just wanted a joke," I stammered, my voice higher than I expected. My words sounded different, lighter, almost musical. "I just wanted to take a picture." Her eyes softened for a moment, but then she shook her head. "This isn't a joke. You look exactly like me." I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything to reverse it, but every movement felt heavier, more alien. My reflection moved in perfect synchrony with me, but the face, the body, it was hers. My voice kept shifting when I tried to call out to her, blending with the tones I had heard her use my whole life. I don't understand," I whispered. Tears stung my eyes. "I just borrowed your dress." Her expression softened further, almost like sympathy, but there was a flicker of mischief, too, in her eyes. "Well, I guess you're stuck now," she said, almost casually, and I wanted to punch her for that, even as panic gripped me. The next days were surreal. Walking to school, I had to pretend I was her. Friends hugged me, strangers smiled, and I barely recognized myself in the mirror. Every movement, every word I spoke felt borrowed, forced. I had to memorize how she walked, how she laughed, how she carried herself, because anyone noticing anything off would have blown the secret instantly. And with every passing hour, I felt less like me and more like her. At first, I hated it. I hated the way her clothes fit my new body, how people treated me differently, the way I sounded when I tried to talk. But slowly something shifted. I started to see the world through her eyes. The small kindnesses she had always shown, the way people relied on her without realizing it, the way her confidence had been invisible to me until now it became tangible. I could feel her strength, her courage, the subtle ways she carried herself that I had never noticed because I had only ever seen her as my annoying sister. Then came the hardest part, facing my family. At home, no one questioned why I looked exactly like her. I had to slip into her life, completely. I had to act like her, talk like her, and even think like her, because anything less would have been suspicious. My parents were kind but confused, asking questions about school, about friends, about my sudden mood changes. I couldn't tell them the truth, and I couldn't go back. I had no idea how or even if it was possible. The first time I went to school as her, I felt every eye on me. People whispered, glanced, smiled, some frowned. And then it hit me, I wasn't just pretending anymore. My movements felt natural, my voice was confident, and for the first time in my life, I felt seen. But there was fear underneath it all, the terror that this was permanent. I started keeping a journal, pouring out my thoughts, my panic, my sorrow. I wrote about wanting to be me again, about hating that this had happened, and about the strange, growing feeling that maybe, just maybe, being her wasn't the worst thing in the world. I started to notice details I had never noticed before, the way her friends genuinely cared about her, the quiet moments of her day where she struggled, the tiny victories she celebrated alone. Living as her gave me perspective, made me more compassionate, more aware, more human. But the nightmare wasn't over. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw my sister's face, her smile, her eyes, and I felt a pang of loss. I wondered if I would ever see my own face again, hear my own voice. The fear, the suspense, the constant masquerade, it was exhausting. I had to navigate relationships carefully, avoid slip-ups, and keep up the illusion flawlessly. One wrong word, one gesture, and the truth would be exposed. And then came the moment that changed everything again. My sister confronted me in private one night. She looked serious, almost vulnerable, and said, "You've been living my life now. I can see you've learned a lot, but have you learned who you really are?" Her words cut through me like a knife. I realized she was right. I had been hiding behind her, pretending, but now I had to face myself. Not the me before the dress, not the me who had joked, but the me who had survived this, who had grown, who had learned empathy and courage in ways I never imagined. Over the next weeks, we began experimenting. We talked, we shared, we tried to understand what had happened. Sometimes the transformations receded a little, sometimes they intensified, and slowly, I began to reclaim pieces of myself. But I also learned that being her, even temporarily, had taught me resilience, self-awareness, and the strange freedom that comes from truly walking in another's shoes. Eventually, I had to make a choice. Accept being her twin permanently, with all its challenges and new identity, or fight to return to my old self and risk losing the lessons I had learned. It wasn't easy. Every mirror reminded me of the price. Every interaction tested my patience and courage. But in the end, I realized that identity isn't just about the face or the body, it's about who you are inside, how you respond to change, and how much you can grow from circumstances beyond your control. The dress was just a catalyst, a spark, but the transformation wasn't only physical. It reshaped my understanding of empathy, courage, and self-discovery. I had borrowed a joke, but I gained a life lesson I could never have imagined. And as I stood in the mirror, half me, half her, I finally smiled, not because I looked like her, but because I had learned to see myself in ways I never could have before. I'm still living with the consequences, still learning, still adapting. Some days I miss my old self desperately. Other days, I embrace this new perspective, grateful for the unexpected journey. And though it began as a prank, a borrowed dress, a joke, I've discovered something real. Transformation isn't just skin deep. It's a mirror to your soul, and sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones that show you who you really are. The next morning, I woke up in her room again, the soft pink dress still clinging to me like a second skin. I had slept fitfully, dreams a jumble of my own face, her face, mirrors, and whispers. I rubbed my eyes and caught my reflection in the dresser mirror. My hair fell perfectly like hers, my eyes glinting with a strange mix of panic and curiosity. I felt like I had crossed into a different life, when I had no idea how to navigate. Breakfast was surreal. My parents chattered as usual, asking about her school day, her homework, but I had to answer carefully. I had to adopt her voice fully, mimic her expressions, and somehow, my brain had learned the nuances faster than I expected. I realized, to my horror and fascination, that living as her was becoming instinctive. It was terrifying how naturally I had adapted. School was a battlefield. Every glance, every smile, every whisper felt magnified. Friends who had been close to my sister noticed subtle differences, my hesitations, the way I carried myself, even my laughter, but none questioned directly. It was as if everyone subconsciously recognized something different, yet no one dared confront it. I felt like a performer trapped on stage with no intermission, and the stakes were impossibly high. I tried to find a moment alone, away from everyone's eyes, and I discovered a quiet hallway that overlooked the school courtyard. I stared at my reflection in the window glass, feeling a hollow ache in my chest. Who was I anymore? Was I just a copy, a shadow, a reflection? Or could I exist as both myself and her? I touched the glass, tracing the contours of the face I was wearing, and the fear clawed at me. What if this wasn't temporary? What if I was stuck? The first test came sooner than I expected. During lunch, my sister's best friend, Mara, approached me. She looked worried, frowning slightly. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I froze. Her voice carried concern, and I realized that she was noticing cracks in the performance. I nodded quickly, forcing a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just tired." Her eyes lingered, searching for the truth behind the mask. My heart pounded. I wanted to tell her everything, scream it, cry it, but the words lodged in my throat. I had to survive today, 1 hour at a time, one interaction at a time. By the afternoon, the novelty of walking as her had faded, replaced by exhaustion. Every glance, every interaction, every mimicry of her voice required energy I didn't know I had. But there were moments, small, fleeting moments, where I felt her perspective fully. I realized how her confidence wasn't just natural charm. It was forged from years of practice, careful observation, and courage in the face of small social battles I had never noticed. Living as her forced me to embody all of that, and somehow I was beginning to understand it, respect it, even admire it. Then came the incident that terrified me more than anything else so far. During gym class, someone threw a ball a little too close, and I instinctively moved to dodge it, but my reflexes weren't quite hers. I stumbled, and my voice, my natural voice, slipped out in a small gasp. The gym fell silent for a heartbeat. I looked up at the group of students, their eyes wide with confusion. And then, mercifully, Mara jumped in with a laugh, making a joke about the clumsiness of her twin. The tension broke, but my heart was still racing. I realized something crucial that day. Living as her wasn't just about appearance, it was about blending seamlessly into her life, anticipating reactions, managing perceptions, and suppressing my own instincts. The more I did it, the more the lines blurred. My identity began to feel like a puzzle with shifting pieces. And yet, somewhere in the chaos, I found small victories, moments where I felt fully capable, fully in control, even within this borrowed skin. Back at home, I began experimenting with subtle changes, small ways to reclaim myself while still appearing as her. I adjusted the way I held my hands, shifted the tone of my voice slightly, experimented with hairstyles she wouldn't normally choose. These tiny rebellions were terrifying and exhilarating at once. My sister watched quietly, sometimes smiling, sometimes frowning, but never intervening. I realized she was giving me space to explore, to find myself even while trapped in her form. One night, late in the week, I found myself crying quietly in her room, exhausted, frustrated, and confused. The dress felt suffocating, and I longed for my old body, my old voice, my old life. But even through the tears, I felt something new, a strange gratitude. The experience, terrifying as it was forcing me to confront my insecurities, my assumptions, my ignorance. I was learning empathy, courage, patience, and resilience in ways I never could have imagined. The days turned into weeks, and my adaptation grew stronger. I could move like her, speak like her, think like her when necessary, but still feel the core of myself underneath. The duality became a strange comfort. I began to notice things I had never noticed before, how people reacted differently to her kindness, the subtle ways her presence influenced others, the quiet power of someone who understood herself deeply. Then came the ultimate test, her birthday. My parents planned a surprise party, inviting friends and relatives. I knew I had to act perfectly, flawlessly, without anyone suspecting. The thought terrified me. I had rehearsed her mannerisms, her expressions, her laughter, but this was a full house, full scrutiny. The party began, and everything was tense at first. I smiled, laughed, hugged, complimented all perfectly as her. But then, someone handed me a gift meant for me. The real me, the sibling who had jokingly borrowed the dress. My heart pounded. The room seemed to close in. How could I accept it without revealing myself? I took a deep breath, smiled, and thanked them, carefully blurring my words just enough to maintain the illusion. My sister gave me a knowing look, a silent signal that she understood my struggle. I realized in that moment that she wasn't angry, wasn't mocking, but quietly supporting me, allowing me to navigate this impossible situation while still learning, growing, and surviving. By the end of the party, I was exhausted, emotionally and physically, but something had shifted. I felt stronger, more self-aware, and more capable of facing the world in ways I never had before. I had walked in her shoes, seen life through her eyes, and though I longed for my own reflection, I knew I was forever changed. And as I lay in her bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I finally whispered to myself, maybe this wasn't just a joke. Maybe this was a chance to discover who I really am, beyond appearances, beyond fear, beyond the dress. I drifted into sleep with a strange mix of relief, fear, and hope. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, whether I would wake up as myself or continue living as her, but I knew one thing. I had survived the impossible, learned lessons I could never have imagined, and found courage in the most unexpected place inside a joke that became my life. The next morning felt heavier than usual. Waking up in my sister's room had become routine, but the reality of living as her was sinking deeper. Every movement felt instinctive now, and yet, every reflection in the mirror reminded me that I wasn't entirely myself. Breakfast passed in awkward conversation. My parents chatted about school, friends, and plans, and I answered as she would, perfectly mimicking her tone, her pauses, her gestures. But inside, I felt the tension of trying not to slip, of not letting a fragment of my old self escape. At school, the challenge escalated. Sitting in the first class, I noticed subtle stares. Some classmates whispered, nudging each other, unsure if they were imagining the similarities or questioning them outright. I had to remind myself to breathe, to move, to smile exactly as she would. The weight of the performance pressed down on me, exhausting me in ways I hadn't anticipated. Every glance felt like an examination, every conversation like a test I could fail. By mid-morning, Mara found me again, slipping into the seat beside me quietly. "You're doing fine," she said softly. "But you look different." I can't put my finger on it. Her concern made my chest tighten. I forced a smile, careful not to let panic show. "I'm just tired," I whispered, letting the excuse pass. But inside, the fear was raw. I was slipping, and anyone noticing too closely could expose everything. In the following days, I discovered that living as her wasn't just about appearance or voice, it was about the subtleties of personality. How she laughed at jokes, how she comforted friends, how she carried herself when no one was watching. I had to study, imitate, anticipate, and adapt constantly. Sometimes I caught myself laughing too loudly or moving too stiffly, and Mara or other friends would glance at me, eyes narrowing slightly, sensing that something was off. The constant vigilance was exhausting. One afternoon during art class, I had a moment that changed everything. While painting, I noticed a quiet girl sitting across from me struggling with her work. Normally, I would have ignored it, buried in my own thoughts. But seeing her frustration, something inside me compelled me to offer help, just as my sister would. I leaned over, pointing out a technique, offering encouragement. She looked up, surprised but grateful, and in that moment, I felt a spark of authenticity, a glimpse of my own self shining through the borrowed skin. It was terrifying and exhilarating. I realized that even as her, I could still make choices, still act with my own heart. The transformation hadn't erased me, it had expanded me. I could be her outwardly, but inwardly, I was discovering courage, empathy, and patience I had never exercised before. Then came the real challenge, navigating her social life. Her friends expected her to respond to messages, make plans, and manage conflicts. I had to juggle all of it, often improvising, guessing how she would react. Every slip-up could unravel the illusion. I stayed up late at night, sending texts, rehearsing conversations in my head, learning the delicate art of living someone else's life without losing my own sense of self. One evening, my sister finally spoke to me alone. She sat across from me, looking more serious than ever. "I can see you've been struggling," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "But I also see you learning. This is a gift in disguise. You're living my life, yes, but you're also discovering something about yourself." Her words hit me harder than I expected. For the first time, I didn't feel trapped. I felt guided, supported. She wasn't just watching. She was letting me navigate this transformation on my own terms, giving me the space to grow, to learn, to adapt. Over the next few weeks, I noticed subtle changes in myself. My patience increased, my empathy deepened, and I learned to handle situations I would have panicked over before. Living as her forced me to develop qualities I had ignored, undervalued, or simply never needed. And gradually, the panic, the fear, the exhaustion, all of it began to shift into something powerful, understanding. Then came the pivotal moment. During a weekend family gathering, I was introduced to relatives who hadn't seen my sister in months. Their eyes scanned me with curiosity, and for a heartbeat, I panicked. Would they notice? Could I maintain the illusion? But I smiled, answered questions confidently, laughed at jokes, and in those moments, I realized something extraordinary. I could navigate this world as her, but I could also imprint pieces of my own self into every action, every word, every gesture. By the end of the night, I was exhausted but exhilarated. I had survived scrutiny, maintained the facade, and even added a personal touch that only I could bring. It was the first time I felt truly competent, truly alive, in this borrowed identity. The weeks turned into months, and I found a rhythm. Mornings were her, days at school were her, interactions with friends were her, but nights became my sanctuary. I experimented, explored, reflected. I wrote in secret journals, sketched, even spoke out loud to remind myself that I still existed beneath the surface. Slowly, the duality became manageable. I was both me and her, each enhancing the other. One late night, I found her sitting in my room, not saying a word, just observing. I asked, "What are you thinking?" She smiled softly. "I'm thinking you've handled this better than I ever imagined. Maybe this wasn't a joke after all. Maybe it was meant to teach both of us something." Her words stayed with me. I realized that the transformation wasn't just physical or external, it was about perspective, understanding, resilience, and identity. The dress, the change, the panic, it was all a catalyst for growth. I still hope, secretly, that someday I'll return fully to myself. But I also understand that this experience has reshaped me in ways I couldn't have anticipated. I've learned courage, empathy, patience, and the strength to navigate life's unexpected twists. And as I lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, I know one thing for certain. I am no longer just the person I was. I am both me and her, and in that, I've found a truth deeper than any reflection, deeper than any dress. School started to feel less like a battlefield and more like a stage I was gradually learning to master. At first, every glance from friends or teachers had felt like a test, a threat to my secret. But now, I began to notice patterns, rhythms, and cues that allowed me to move naturally as her. I could anticipate reactions, answer questions with confidence, and even navigate tricky social situations without panicking. Still, the emotional strain never fully lifted. Some days, I caught myself standing in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection, feeling the hollow ache of missing my own face. I would touch my cheeks, my jaw, my hair, and for a brief moment, hope that it would flicker back into my original self. But the mirror never lied. I was her, in ways both terrifying and fascinating. One day during lunch, a confrontation nearly blew everything apart. A group of classmates approached, teasing her about something she had supposedly done the week before. I froze, unsure of how she would react. Panic clawed at my chest. Then I remembered her confidence, her ability to handle pressure, her grace under scrutiny. I took a deep breath and responded just as she would, firm yet calm, redirecting the conversation, defusing the tension. The group shuffled away, muttering, and I realized I had done it. I had survived a moment that would have terrified me as myself. The realization hit me hard. Living as her wasn't just a test of appearance, it was teaching me courage. It was showing me a side of myself I had never known, a resilience I had never tapped into. The dress hadn't just changed my body, it had shifted my perspective. Evenings became a strange mix of relief and reflection. When everyone else had gone to bed, I would sneak into my own thoughts, peeling back the layers of my borrowed identity. I journaled obsessively, trying to capture every nuance of this surreal experience, the fear, the panic, the tiny victories, the moments of empathy, the glimpses of courage. Writing helped me anchor myself, reminding me that beneath the surface, I still existed. The first big emotional test came with my sister's school award ceremony. She had always been a model student, and this year, she was receiving recognition for her achievements. I knew I had to attend in her place flawlessly. Every step, every smile, every word had to be perfect. The night of the ceremony, I dressed in her formal outfit, feeling the familiar mix of panic and anticipation. When my name, or rather, hers was called, I walked up to the stage, heart pounding. The applause was deafening, and I felt every eye on me. But instead of panicking, I drew on everything I had learned over the past weeks. I smiled, accepted the award, delivered the brief speech she had written, and returned to my seat with steady grace. Relief washed over me, mingled with an unexpected pride. I had done it. I had embodied her completely and succeeded. The transformation wasn't just external, it had seeped into my mind, my heart, my understanding of people. I began to notice things about friends, teachers, and family that I had ignored before. I became attuned to emotions, subtle cues, and unspoken needs. Living as my sister had made me more compassionate, patient, and self-aware. And then came the moment that changed everything completely. One quiet afternoon, my sister approached me and said, "I think you're ready to decide. You can continue living as me, or we can try to find a way to reverse this." I froze. The decision felt impossibly heavy. To return to my old self meant reclaiming my original identity, yes, but it also meant losing the lessons, the empathy, and the courage I had gained. To remain as her meant embracing a life that wasn't fully mine, at least outwardly. I took a deep breath, weighing the possibilities. In the end, I realized something profound. Identity isn't just skin deep. It isn't just appearance or voice or the expectations of others. It is a combination of experience, growth, understanding, and courage. And I had grown in ways I could never have imagined. I want to keep the lessons I've learned," I whispered. "I want to be me, but I also want to carry what I've learned from being her." She nodded, a small, knowing smile on her face. "Then you've already made the right choice. The rest is up to you." The days that followed were transformative in a new way. I began reclaiming myself, adjusting the reflection in the mirror to merge my identity with hers, maintaining the empathy, courage, and insight I had gained, while re-establishing my own voice, movements, and presence. It was difficult, sometimes painful, but every step felt like a reclamation. By the time the school year ended, I had found a balance. I could be myself fully, yet I carried pieces of her with me, her confidence, her grace, her empathy. The joke that had started it all had become a journey of self-discovery, a catalyst for growth, and a mirror reflecting the depths of who I truly was. Looking back now, I understand the truth. Transformation isn't only about the body or the external. It's about perspective, understanding, courage, and resilience. The borrowed dress had forced me to confront my fears, embrace empathy, and discover the strength that lived within me all along. I smile now when I think of it, not because it was easy, not because it was funny, but because it changed me. It forced me to see the world and myself differently. And though I no longer live fully as my sister, I carry pieces of her with me, reminders of the journey, the challenges, the growth, and the profound lesson that sometimes the most unexpected experiences reveal who we truly are. Summer came, and with it, a strange sense of calm. The initial chaos of living as my sister had faded into routine, but the lessons lingered. I still woke up some mornings in her room, and for a heartbeat, panic would strike. But now, instead of fear, I felt a quiet understanding. I had navigated this borrowed life, faced its challenges, and grown stronger. Family interactions became more honest. One evening, my parents sat me down. "You've changed," my mother said softly, her eyes searching mine. "There's something different about you, but in a good way." I smiled, feeling a mixture of relief and gratitude. "I've learned a lot," I admitted. "Not just about her, but about myself." My sister entered the room quietly and sat beside me, her expression calm and proud. "It wasn't easy," she said, "but I think you've found something important. Who you are isn't just about how you look. It's about how you handle life, how you treat others, and how you grow." Her words resonated deeply. I realized that the dress, the transformation, the fear, the embarrassment, they had all been catalysts for growth. I had been forced to walk in her shoes, literally and figuratively, and in doing so, I had discovered courage, empathy, and patience I never knew I had. School resumed in the fall, and I returned fully as myself. But the lessons remained. I noticed classmates struggling, offering help as she might, but with my own voice and approach. I handled social pressures with a newfound calm, navigated tricky situations with confidence, and embraced challenges I would have once avoided. The world didn't feel threatening anymore. It felt full of opportunities to learn, to connect, and to grow. Friends began noticing subtle changes. Mara, who had always been observant, pulled me aside one day. "You're different," she said. "Not in a bad way. You're stronger, more aware. It's like you've grown overnight." I laughed softly, thinking of the impossible weeks when I had been trapped in her identity. "I guess I have," I admitted, "in ways I never expected." Even my sister and I developed a new closeness. The experience had bonded us in ways nothing else could. We shared secrets, laughed about past antics, and sometimes just sat together in quiet understanding. The borrowed dress that had caused chaos had also forged empathy and trust between us. The final lesson came quietly on a simple afternoon. I was sitting in my room, looking at the dress neatly folded in the closet. It no longer held fear, only memory. I traced its fabric with my fingers, remembering the panic, the laughter, the lessons, and the growth. I realized that identity isn't fixed, isn't defined solely by appearance or expectation. It is fluid, layered, and strengthened by experiences, challenges, and the courage to face them. I put the dress back in the closet, not as a symbol of fear or loss, but as a reminder of the journey. I had borrowed a joke, but I had gained something far more profound: insight, resilience, empathy, and the knowledge that I could face life in any form, as myself, as her, or as any reflection of growth I chose to embrace. Standing before the mirror one last time, I saw myself fully, my features, my voice, my posture, a blend of who I had been, who I had temporarily become, and who I had learned to be. I smiled softly, whispering to no one in particular, "I am me, and I am stronger than I ever imagined." And in that quiet moment, I knew the transformation had ended not in fear, not in panic, but in understanding, acceptance, and the quiet courage that comes from surviving the impossible.